Thanks for joining us today. Glad to have you with us. I am Greg Belkin. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Jitterbit. Welcome to today's webinar, 5 tips to build a highly connected campus experience. We're glad to have you with us. Today's webinar is all about learning more about planning for automation and growing the campus experience and why it's critical for growth for the higher education institution, some best practices for your institution's automation journey, and of course, 5 awesome tips institutions can bring to the table right now to build a really connected, hyper-automated campus. The goal, of course, is to use the learnings to help deal with the challenges of enrollment declines, increasing financial pressures, and the fact that institutions have to reassess how they're operating today and how their business model is going to work in the future, or risk alienating students and parents who are seeking more and more creative options. I have to say, as a parent, I can totally relate. I have 2 kids who are now in high school, and my financial advisor is giving me the eyeball about saving and planning for college. And so this is a topic that's specifically and personally on my mind, so I'm very passionate about it. So I'm lucky that I'm joined by an awesome crew today that's going to help deliver the presentation. 2 executives from our partner, Cloud for Good. Our first one is Luke Maker, who is Delivery Director for Cloud for Good, and Ken Smith, who's Account Executive, also from Cloud for Good. Let me tell you about these 2 great people. Luke Maker is a Delivery Director in Cloud for Good's data and integration practice. They have 15 years experience developing data solutions in the higher ed nonprofit industry, and they're experienced in integration architecture, multi-tower implementations, and managing technical teams. Ken Smith is an account executive for Cloud for Good's higher education team. Ken spent the last 5+ years at Cloud for Good and Salesforce, helping education clients really understand and how Salesforce technology can help them improve the experience for students, staff, alumni, and community members. All right, so agenda. The plan for today's presentation is really, really simple, right? First, I'm going to provide you with just a quick overview of who Jitterbit is. 1 slide, very quick, I promise. But I think it's important to show, where we're coming from. And then equally as quick, Ken from Cloud for Good is going to do the same exact thing for his organization. Second order of business is to talk and set the stage for trends that we see in higher education, from the Jitterbit side, from the Cloud for Good side, what those trends are, what we're seeing, and really where automation fits in. And then some innovative use cases for automation. And we're going to name names. We're going to talk about specific organizations that we work with that have really kind of set the stage and kind of hit that kind of best for class perspective. Berkeley, for example, Berkeley Online, University of Alabama, Indiana University. What are they doing? How are they doing it? How are they benefiting from it? The success. Third order of business is to offer some tips and tricks along the way. I have some thoughts about it, and Luke and Ken have some thoughts about it. And we really want to just kind of think strategically about, what can you do right now to really excel in the space. And then finally, of course, the Q&A section. We're going to be monitoring as we go and hopefully kind of tweaking our content based on the asks that you have. But, we're going to save some space at the end to answer the questions. Okay, so really quick, Jitterbit. Just a quick overview. Simply put, Jitterbit, our vision is to empower anyone to transform their business, accelerate growth through hyper-automation. In other words, basically, allow our customers to solve end-to-end business automation problems using a very simple, singular online platform. We at Jitterbit, we're really focused on forward-looking companies, and we see them being very successful, streamlining ops, maximizing revenue, and we're really focused on helping our customers get there and achieve those goals. We're very, very hot here about hyper-automation, and we believe it's going to play a big role in the future. we're uniquely in a position to help extend that voyage along with our partners. We were founded about 20 years ago at this point, and we've been evolving ever since to remain innovative in the space. And our leadership team brings a lot of iPaaS and just general integration knowledge. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ken, who's going to talk about Cloud for Good.
Great. Thanks, Greg. So yeah, we here at Cloud for Good, we've been partnering with Jitterbit for a number of years, but we got started about 13 years ago. And our focus then and now continues to be helping apply Salesforce technology to organizations and institutions in education and nonprofit. So we get the benefit of taking the full breadth of Salesforce technology, but really focusing it in on those two areas. And today, we'll talk to you a lot, obviously, about education, where I sit. So over that time, we've completed now over 3,000 Salesforce projects, probably a little more than half of them related to fundraising and advancement. So it happens to be a big space. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Those projects range from CRM implementations, marketing cloud, data architecture, things like that as well. So the automation and integrations that come with our partnership with Jitterbit are very important to this to everything that we do. So look forward to digging into this a little bit further here throughout the session.
Awesome. All right. So now we want to go to our poll question. What are your institution's top goals for the next 12 months? As people answer this, there's obviously it makes me think we've got a lot of top goals going around here. But it's going to be very interesting, Ken and Luke, to see what these priorities are. There's a lot of people, a lot of worry, lots on their plate. And let's see where we are. So looks like we have a very strong focus on modernizing IT infrastructure to keep up with needs. That looks to me like the top one. We also have, increase the number of students enrolled, making sure that we're in a position the organizations are in a position to maximize their experience, maximize their student body. Okay, and then I think this next one is for Ken to talk a little bit about the top trends.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Greg. So yeah, this is great to see what you all are seeing as the key goals for the next 12 months, and they relate pretty well to what we here at Cloud for Good found out in our most recent State of Salesforce in Education survey. So part of our focus on education means finding out from our clients and institutions at large what's important to them. So each year we conduct what we call a State of Salesforce in Education survey. We do a similar one in the nonprofit industry. It's usually done second half of the year. Both clients and non-clients of ours go ahead and respond to it. It's really focused on folks who are using Salesforce or going to be using Salesforce, what they use it for, plans for the future, their staffing, training, and things that surround it. And part of those questions also are, what are some of your top goals for that? So the five objectives we see on the screen were the ones that came up as the top 5 in our most recent survey. And they're falling in line pretty closely to the responses we're seeing here in this poll question. The top 2, one was increasing funds for your institution. So there's a couple things in here around alumni engagement, increased funds. They kind of fell into that bucket. The better use of analytics and reporting came in second, which here is right near the top, and data privacy in third. So very similar to what we're seeing here, what we found back in the second half of last year in a survey. It seemed to be still issues that folks are seeing here in your roles today.
And just looking at these, I mean, these are some of the focus points for that we've seen in our travels as well, Ken. I mean, I think going through the experience, but making the most use of data reporting, making sure it's done safely and securely, while thinking about the business side of things, increasing the number of students you're bringing in, and carrying through the process, I think is really the top goals. So that's great. So the next part I want to talk a little bit about is this concept of hyper automation and how it can transform the higher ed experience very effectively. And as I said at the beginning, it's something that we're very passionate about it here at Jitterbit. What we're really focusing on is the voyage from automation to hyper automation, and how that can really affect higher ed in a quantum way. and some of the benefits that organizations can see in the space can see as a result. When we think about hyperautomation is a term that Gartner has coined, the analyst research formed. And it's really the way they describe it and the way we think about it is a really kind of a business-driven, disciplined approach to that higher education's, well, any organizations really can take to rapidly identify and vet and automate as many business and IT processes as possible. Now, that's a whole lot of words in one sentence, but basically it boils down to this, right? It's if something can and should be automated, it is automated. It's not a product, a tool, or a technology. It's none of those. It's really a framework, a way of grasping and a way of visualizing automation and bringing different technologies together. One that you might find in marketing, recruitment, e-learning, student success, everywhere within the organization. So why do it? I mean, there's several reasons. Why take that voyage from automation to hyperautomation? I mean, if you think about it, macroeconomics first, right? The pressure of prioritizing processes with limited budgets, with limited headcount, doing more with less, puts the pressure on really expanding the scope of automation within the higher ed enterprise. Explosion of SaaS, right? I mean, there's so many applications that so many different departments use, and along with those SaaS applications come processes that sit on top of them. And a level of hyperautomation is needed to really respond to them and to be able to maximize them and to maximize ROI. And then finally, what comes to mind is, maximizing the student experience, right? I mean, students need, demand, they want the best experience possible. As when my two kids hit college, they're going to want like a first-class experience all the way. And all of these different systems that are there to manage their day-to-day life, it's up to the community to maximize them and not just, throw a SaaS application or an application in general at them, but rather to really maximize as hard as they go. So like I said, hyperautomation, it's not really a tool. It's not a product or technology. It's again, a framework, a way of thinking that gives guidance on how to automate all processes into a business framework. However, obviously getting there is really difficult. For that reason, it's important to be very strategic. You have to really think about, is it important? Which piece of the experience is important from your perspective to start with? Where should I start? What technologies make the most sense? Is it iPaaS? Is it APIM, low code? What are my use cases? What are my low-hanging fruit that's going to bring me success along the way? So you really need, a very close strategic plan, and of course, commitment from those folks who are around to help. I'm not saying it's easy. The next thing you got to think of, like I mentioned on my other slide, is budgetary considerations. Taking a close look at vendors, asking tough questions, all of them, and understanding what's really involved in a hyperautomation perspective. What do they bring to the table? What is their timeline? What do they offer? How do they connect? And then just finally, understanding the complexity of getting things going. You should be focused on solving problems, and you should expect the vendor that you partner with, whomever they be, to help manage this and, really understand the existing layout of what makes your systems work. And so that's really critical. Again, one just kind of example of how we handle that here at Jitterbit is we're really trying to focus on delivering a modern way, a platform that brings all of these business needs together. That's just, how we're thinking about it, and thinking about it in sort of a one throat to choke model where things are together, combined with service and guidance to really help automate and extend and optimize the interaction and automation of your existing processes, so that you can stay ahead of industry trends and really capitalize on growth opportunities as they come. So, that's kind of the quick vision. of hyperautomation, which is so important. With that being said, it's time for our next poll question, which is, from your perspective, which of the following platforms does your institution use? I'm sure, everybody has a lot of different systems that we're all engaged with. I can see already that Salesforce is number one, and that makes a lot of sense given the breadth of that. So you can see again, as I mentioned, Salesforce, very, very popular, and that makes sense. Ellucian, Blackbaud, Oracle, Slate, and I'd really like to see Workday here. I think sometimes we forget that the student experience is much more than just the student. It's the staff and the faculty, and managing their experience, making sure that things like time and attendance and all the various HR related functions are being properly addressed and properly automated. All right, so this is the UAB case study. I believe they're a joint Jitterbit Cloud for Good customer, and so to talk about them, I'm going to hand it over to Luke. Luke, all you.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, this is a project that we did alongside Jitterbit. UAB came to us with some challenges. They were really struggling to manage personalized communications to their potential students. And the reason for that is they had student data spread across various different apps and tools, which made it really hard to target their campaigns, as well as just to manage the recruitment and application process. So they were coming to us really looking for a unified system to manage both recruitment and admissions, and something that could scale with them. We implemented Salesforce Education Cloud, Experience Cloud, and Marketing Cloud together to support recruitment, online applications, and then also manage the whole application review process for their faculty who were reviewing students. So thinking about the integration side of this, the Jitterbit piece, so we had student demographic and academic data coming from Banner, student information system, into Salesforce, and that was just to inform, who are these students and potential students. All of the application processing is managed within Salesforce and then synced back to Banner. And then there's also a separate app in the landscape that is for integrating student prospect data from ACT and College Board into Salesforce. So that's really to centralize those prospects and the recruitment messaging within Salesforce. So really it turns Salesforce into this source of truth for that whole process. And some of the benefits coming out of this project, so now they have the ability to craft targeted campaigns to their potential students, and they can measure the outcome of those campaigns. So they have this whole pipeline that they can track, so they can see which different appeals and campaigns are more effective at generating yield and getting students to enroll. And then on the other side, on the sort of the internal side, they have reduced time and complexity in terms of managing the application review process and selecting students. So it was a really great project, a real great use case for using Jitterbit to manage all of those different pieces of data and getting them in the right place at the right time. And I think next, Greg is going to tell us about another awesome customer.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. That was great, Luke. So this is one of my favorite case studies to talk about, which is Berklee College of Music, and more specifically, Berklee Online. I was chatting with the team earlier before we started the webinar, and I mentioned that, I'm a bit biased here because my niece Amanda goes there and she loves it. She's an aspiring opera singer, and it's really, really kind of interesting story. So it's something I can relate to. And, because of course I'm a Bostonite and it's right around the corner. It's particularly fun for me to talk about this one. So the Berklee Online offers credit courses, certificates, bachelor's, master's degree, exactly the same programs and faculty and flow that Berklee, the Berklee campus offers. It provides direct access to the same instruction, the same curriculum, the same expert instruction in music and skills. One of the things that it realized that the program was that it's really under a lot of pressure to keep its IT infrastructure up to date, as seamlessly connected as possible to be, that amazing experience that, the students, faculty, and administrators want, on a, the same experience that they would want if they were walking around campus. Simply put, they really needed a growing infrastructure to support modern growth. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And extending the journey from automation to hyper automation, as I talked about earlier. With its infrastructure expanding, with its needs growing, with its students demanding more, they had a lot of inefficient processes, a lot of siloed data that they realized, and a lot of lack of visibility into their processes. And so to address the challenges, the organization was very good at, really focusing on and prioritizing what they needed, making a plan, being very strategic, and kind of building a modern, agile approach to digital connectivity. So what did it do? It found a very easy, rapid integration between mission-critical platforms, kind of, again, that low-hanging fruit or fruit that was critical to get right from the beginning. The online program, what they did is they first experimented with some custom solutions that didn't work out as well, provided a little bit to be too difficult, too time-consuming. And so they used iPaaS technology to build an integration strategy that flowed not just in one particular area, but throughout the entire program to address the needs of a lot of different areas of the business. The team connected its Salesforce application with Lucian College ERP and internal databases and really gave them a nice 360 view of their data. The group also created integrations connecting Salesforce with Informer Analytics, Marketo, marketing automation, and an FTP platform. So again, they started off, they recognized the need. They were very strategic and very specific. And we're very careful about, building a plan and following that plan to its fruition. All right, Indiana University, and I think this is to Ken.
Yep, thanks, Greg. So we've touched on a couple of cases here. Now we'll talk a little bit more on that advancement and fundraising stage of things. So Indiana University Foundation and Alumni Association, so two groups that work together, they set out on a goal to essentially reinvent the digital experience for their alumni and donors, and also engage with them on a more personal level. A big part of being able to do that was being able to take data from different places to deliver it to folks who could use it in a timely manner, and to do some automation with that as well. So another big part of that project was to rework their giving platform and the tools, we mentioned that, engage with that, because what they wanted to do was create an Amazon-like experience for all of their alumni and donors. So they recognize that they're competing with attention of other things, right? So to make it more appealing and easy for their constituents to donate money to the foundation is something that was really driving a lot of their desire. And their overall goal, what they were shooting for, was to enable those donors and alumni to be able to give a gift in less than 30 seconds on their website after they've identified the funds that they wanted to contribute to. So making this all work on the front end in a nice seamless way is really important, and doing it on the back end is really difficult. And that's where the integrations came in, and being able to go ahead and tie these different systems together, bring data from, and not move them. These systems of record were still going to stay where they were. So the integration and automation aspects and being able to get that into Salesforce was a really important piece of the puzzle. So IUF, the Indiana University Foundation, they partnered with Cloud for Good to deliver this experience and to integrate and automate these processes. They've now been live on this solution since fall of last year, around October. We've been able to see a couple of their presentations, either at Dreamforce and then at the Education Summit. And what they were able to do is present on the results, not just the experience, but also the results. So what they reported back in April at the Education Summit is that after 6 months on the platform, they had already seen a 230% increase in recurring gifts. So being able to tie those components together, deliver that experience, and integrate it all on the back end has really helped drive some significant improvements in not only their processes, but the results that they're seeing as part of this project.
All right, awesome. All right, now it's time for one more poll question. And the question is, what are the biggest challenges to integrating your institution systems and automating processes? All right. So we never said it was easy. So there's obviously challenges that every organization is dealing with: legacy systems, concerns over data, budget, internal resistance to change. There's a lot of different things that organizations are dealing with. And so that, I guess, the key question is, what's your strategy and your way of approach? All right, so interesting. Budget or resource constraints, that obviously makes a lot of sense. There's an ROI to justify. There's the fact that there's a lot of legacy systems that need to be dealt with. Resistance to change, making people comfortable with new processes and procedures is definitely not easy. Okay, so now comes the fun part, which is the 5 tips for implementing integration and automation. I'm going to cover 3, and Luke from Cloud for Good is going to talk a little bit about the others. So the first one that always comes to mind is to be careful to build an integration strategy. And you got to think strategically, come up with a plan. I think that's well thought out and well vetted. It's way too easy to identify one part of the organization, say, geez, I wish this were automated better. And I wish that our student portal had better data connections, or just some sort of quick gut reaction to where in the organization and how to engage. But I think you really need to come in and have a very organized strategy and make sure it's something that's it's mindful of the ROI that you're expecting, it's mindful of the entire organization, and it's organized. It also has to answer, where are you starting? And I think the part of any project or any spend that gets analyzed the most or is up to the most scrutiny is probably at the beginning. So, being able to go in and identify properly how you're going to approach and how you're going to engage and get it all documented. And of course, that leads in well to tip number 2, which is to ask for feedback from your team. If you're building an integration strategy, if you look around the college or university, it's likely that there's going to be a lot of different people who have a lot of different opinions. And I think that that's going to lead to some great results. Ask your team, go to your team and say, this is one, we need better integration, we need better automation, and ask them to weigh in on different areas of the business that they see as really having the most bang for the buck in terms of, driving ROI. And it could be, if you see one area that's, really a sore thumb that needs better automation and integration, chances are your team is probably going to see the same thing, or is going to give you feedback that's going to allow you to refine your strategy that we talked about in tip number 1 to really be the most effective and the most sensitive to ROI. So I think making sure that you have feedback that is informing that strategy. And then, of course, tip number 3, I think feeds into tip number 2, and that is to think interdepartmental. We're all very focused on the student experience and making sure that the student experience is the most effective and the best possible. But there are a lot of different departments that touch the student experience. And there are a lot of experiences that need to be thought of in addition to the students. There's the faculty, their experience. There is the administration, their experience. There is the support team, their experience. It's important, obviously, to think very closely about how students are being affected and how they're engaging, but it's more than that. You got to take a multi-departmental approach, especially when you're thinking very carefully about justifying an ROI, justifying a plan, making sure that the areas within the business that are the most impactful are touched the quickest, and making sure that it can be the most effective. So with that, Luke, over to you for tip 4 and 5.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, tip 4, I think, is kind of similar to what you were talking about, is the idea of thinking about multi-persona. So when you're really designing that architecture, thinking about the needs of multiple types of users. So how can the integration layer enable different teams and different business processes, and not just the one thing that you're trying to solve for right in front of you. So it's kind of taking that bigger enterprise view and figuring out how can I unlock information for users in a way that's flexible. And then the fifth tip we have is planning ahead for additional data inputs. Expect that once you design your integration, you will end up expanding it. People are going to get excited about what can be done, and they'll have ideas for other things that can also be automated and integrated. And so just thinking about how are we going to expand this over time? What is going to be your process for managing changes over time? Who's responsible? Who makes decisions about what data points are going to be in the system included? How are you managing that? And then who's actually developing and building it out? So thinking about the post launch and ongoing kind of management of your system. And then I know this is 5 tips, but I had a couple of other thoughts too that came to mind. One is thinking about how you'll test your integration and what's your test plan. So you're in your project, it feels like go live is going to be a ways down the road, but really start working on that test plan early and know how are you going to test all your integrations and your data, and how are you going to release that. Figure out who's going to be involved, what roles will be, and how much time they'll need to dedicate, because that's really one of the most critical pieces of success, is making sure that you've had the right eyes on something and that you've put it through the right tests to make sure that when you go live, you get exactly what you need for users to be able to do their work. And then the last thing I would like to mention too is documentation. So make sure that you create a good framework for documenting your integration solution, including like mappings of system A to system B, what fields are going where and what kind of transformations are being done. That becomes really important, especially as a team gets larger, so that everyone has a single place to look and understand what is in the system and what might need to be added or changed going forward. So yeah, that was kind of my tips, and I'll hand it back to you, Greg.
Awesome. Okay, good ones. So just a couple last steps. One thing we wanted to do is, again, make sure you feel comfortable and that we're here to connect and discuss. On the Jitterbit side, we have a demo and a complimentary consultation that we can take you through. To get there, it's jitterbit.com/contact us. And then similar on the Cloud for Good side, it's cloudforgood.com/contact us/. So again, we are here to talk shop. We're here to guide and to help. And so we want you to feel free to bring that forward. Okay, question and answer time. So let me just check the box to see if we have any questions. Okay, so we do have a couple questions that came in, and I wanted to kind of bring it around the horn. One of the questions that I think is a really, really good one is talking a little bit about future trends. The question is, what are some future trends and developments in automation that colleges and universities should be aware of? So, this is the fun part where, we look to the future to look into the crystal ball to see what's coming. And one thing that is both, in the future and also here and now is for me, this concept of low code. And this is something that Jitterbit sees a lot, which is LCAP, which is low code application platforms. And what we see is, with a lot of these, a lot of businesses and a lot of higher ed institutions, kind of maxed out on staff for IT, and kind of feeling the heavy burden of a lot of projects, really kind of shifting a lot of the application building and data integration duties over to line of business folks, and that's really speaks to the heart of what LCAP is about. Is again shifting that burden. It's not that IT isn't involved. They certainly are. But basically what it means is that line of business can take a much more active role in engaging with different organizations who are championing these products and saying, hey, you're passionate about this, you need this to solve your business. This is something that can really help you. You can pilot, you can control. We'll still be involved, but not as much. And at the same time, issues like security and those kind of things are properly dealt with. Luke, Chris, any thought on that question on the future technology section?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of like trends from the student population as well. And I think what we're seeing is that students now like really expect a personalized experience that is tailored to them. So because of all the apps that we're used to, having companies talk directly to us and understand things about us, I think that's kind of the expectations, is that I will get an email that's tailored to me and my interests.
Yeah.
When I go fill out an application form for my university, it already knows my name because I've already been involved. Like things are pre-filled. So just kind of that experience that is tailored and fast and easy to navigate. And I think given that there's so much competitiveness for recruiting students right now, and kind of getting more so, that just anything we can do to make that application process as easy and smooth and as intuitive as possible is really important. And technology obviously can play a role there.
Yeah, agree. What about you, Ken? Any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I think the other thing to look at is as organizations change to more of an engagement model with their alumni and constituents. So instead of just trying to provide generic content out to people, they're trying to get a better understanding of what people like and how they interact with the school historically and now, so that they can reach out to them in a better way. And being able to find where that data comes from and automating getting that data from, say, different silos of different schools within a college or university, different departments, to the people who are in charge of that engagement effort is going to be something that's important. And that's something we're starting to see already. Yeah,
makes sense. The next one, which I think is really interesting, is kind of, again, talking about cost savings. What are the potential cost savings associated with automation in higher education? And how can institutions measure the ROI of that? So again, one of the things I think of, again, is from my perspective, is again this growing use of SaaS applications, and conceptually they offer quite a bit of savings and quite a bit of easier way of dealing with the technology by not having to deal with these systems on premise. But along with those SaaS applications comes a lot of processes and a lot of procedures that aren't baked in, that have to be sort of figured out as you go. So just bringing those processes down is, again, a real critical way to, from my opinion, to measure ROI, and also think about the amount of hours that different your different teams are dedicating to solving these issues, is to me another way of dealing. How fast are these processes dealt with? How many hours does it take from your team to get these systems, the data from one to the other? I think that, to me, is a key ROI piece of it. Again, Ken, Luke, would really appreciate your input.
Yeah, I was thinking the same way along the hours in a capacity point of view. So if you currently have something that takes you 10 hours to do, and you can do it in a fraction of that, what can you do with that time? So we see a lot of our clients now, right? People they have less staff than they've had in the past, but they have more things to do. So the cost savings might be in just being able to accomplish things that weren't able to be accomplished before, or I always saw with the Indiana case, being able to raise more funds as a result of some of the automations that they put in place.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. It's more about like, how can you divert your focus to like really high impact activities, as opposed to more of the grunt work of processing things that could be automated.
Right. Cool. And then we can hit one or two more of these. So one question is, are there any specific skills or resources that higher ed institutions need to have in place to effectively leverage automation technologies? And, it's funny, like, I think that if I were asked this question, maybe, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would have said, how important it is that, people, could, bring to the table some coding skills and some, technically savvy understanding of how these systems work together. But I think more and more, from my perspective, it seems like we're asking, we're in a position where we can ask more and more of line of business and other non-IT folks to really get engaged. And again, that may be through low-code tools, or it may be just, having more interest, more in a role of playing it, of building that architecture, or at least, sitting co-pilot with IT in order to figure this out. So I feel like there's much more of a role for folks who are not as technically savvy as there used to be. Ken, Luke, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the tool and it depends on the complexity of the landscape. There's definitely like wonderful training out there. Jitterbit University is a great example of wonderful training program to get up to speed on that tool. So I think either having someone in-house who's excited and ready and able to get trained, or being able to partner with another organization to have like a managed services run team type of thing to support your integration, all depending on like the scale and complexity of what you've got to manage.
Cool. All right, so last question. Are you noticing any activity among your teams in universities to maintain real-time data synchronization across multiple systems over time? Are there more instances of broadcast bidirectional sync or correlation patterns being used? Ken, Luke, you want to, either of you want to take a swing at this one?
I'll stop. We're seeing a lot more requests for things like real-time data synchronization. A lot of times what we find out is that may mean different things to different people, especially relative to where they're coming from. If you're with a system now that gets updated, less than once a day, then that once a day or twice a day or 3 times a day is what you need. So we are seeing a lot more requests for the real-time piece of things. I can definitely speak to that.
Great.
Yeah, I see that too. And I think there can be limitations on some of these like student information systems that just like can't quite handle real time for everything all the time, but then identifying like what are the real business problems we're trying to solve? What are the things that we need the data real time? What are the other things that like a daily batch is perfect, or an hourly or whatever? So I think that kind of comes back to designing the overall architecture, thinking about the capabilities of the systems involved and what ultimately like what the users are trying to accomplish, and then designing the most efficient and elegant solution to meet those needs.
Great. Ken and Luke, I just wanted to say thank you for coming with me on this voyage on today's webinar. I thought it was really great and loved your insights, and thank you so much for participating.
No, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Greg.